Men, and as usual, I use the term ever so loosely. The 70's chopper. Rebuild is done, engine is back in, and I'm now fixing all the little bullshit stuff that was screwed up. For one, the wiring harness was a mess. For two, the rear brake was all screwed up. We'll get to more of that in a second. But anyway, bike is coming along nicely for the most part. This owner wanted a front brake on it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to accommodate him. The controlling factor on how big of a hub could fit on this bike is the distance between these pivot bolts on the rockers. And on this bike, that distance is just a scotch over 4 inches, like 4 1/16. I have not been able to find a wheel hub that is that narrow. Well, a wheel hub with a brake on it that is that narrow. This is a Harley wheel hub, and it is about 4.5 inches across here, so that won't work. I found a company that makes custom narrow wheels that will accommodate a disc brake, and their narrowest wheel is about 4 1/4. So that one, you know, theoretically, nah, you can't get it to fit it. It just there's just no room to get it in there. So I can't find a wheel narrow enough to put on that front end. So unfortunately, this bike is going to go without a front brake on it, which made it all the more important to fix the back brake. This owner had commented that the rear brake just did not feel good. It didn't feel like it was working right. And he thought it might have to do with the flimsy forward control setup. And indeed, that may very well have been part of his problem. However, I put the engine back in, I'm starting to hook all the peripherals up, and I went to examine the brake. And interestingly, the brake drum is cracked and split. The crack starts down in this area, runs up here, and the whole chunk of the brake drum is broken off. Now, I haven't pulled the wheel off from underneath here yet, so there may be other damage, but it doesn't matter. This is enough damage to make it totally useless. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, the brake lever, and I don't want to handle all this shit because it's of course filthy and I'm trying to hold the camera and video at the same time. Problem number two, the brake actuating cam right here, the lever on the other side, very, very stiff, would barely move. It would not return to the brake off position. It was completely and totally bound up. And I thought, geez Louise. Well, I put a little liquid wrench on it, didn't fix it. Took it apart, and what I found was the brake shoes were riding on the edge of this washer, and it had kind of bent the washer and folded it up underneath there a little bit. And essentially the washer was now the brake activating cam, and of course it's round, so whatever the brake pads were pushed out, they wouldn't push out any farther. So anyway, got to work on this. So, and the shoes are cracked and broken around the edges. So he needs a new brake disc and new brake shoes. And the bill just keeps getting bigger. Anyway, this parts are in order. It'll get fixed a little later. Okay, on to the next problem. This is, of course, the adapter plate to affix the air filter to the S&S carburetor. And I don't know if the video will pick it up, but this screw right here is bent. Instead of going straight in and straight out like it should, it's kind of cocked off at a little bit of an angle. And I assume that's because the holes in the backing plate don't quite line up with the holes in the carburetor. And if you look at this piece of crap, how many fucking holes does it need to have? What a fucking piece of crap. Here's the problem. Well, one of the problems the non-alignment of the holes cause. The adapter plate doesn't fit flush on the front of the carburetor. Fuck. Let's look at some of the design features of this sad sack air filter. Mounting holes, 1, 2, 3. One of them was drilled on the inside of the elbow. You can't even get the mounting screw in and out of here. I don't know how it got put in the first place. Obviously, it must have been forced in there. What the fuck? Kind of stupid. This is why mechanics hate engineers. They design something that's impossible to correctly assemble. So, okay, you force the screw in there. Now you can't get a wrench on the head of it. How do they expect this thing to function in any way whatsoever? Had they put the 2 screws here and the third one out here, you'd be able to install the goddamn thing. But the way this has been manufactured, you can't. So, I wanted to do part of a video on what a sad sack piece of crap this was. And of course, I don't know who installed it on the bike. For all I know, the current owner is the guy who put this on there. So I had to call him up and ask him what he thought about it, and ask him whether or not it was on the bike when he bought it, and whether or not he liked it. And yes, it was on the bike when he bought it. No, he wasn't particularly fond of it. And I said, it's a piece of fucking crap. Anyway, so he okayed buying another one. The bike was going to get a standard S&S teardrop air cleaner on it, and those little bastards are pricey. But let's look at something else about this thing that really, really kind of trips my trigger. I haven't taken this much apart yet, so I don't know how it's going to come apart exactly. I don't know what this thing cost. I'm sure it probably wasn't cheap, or maybe it was. It's kind of heavy, which is actually a bad thing because you got it hanging on the end of a carburetor at the end of a long lever arm, and it's going to make the carburetor come loose on the manifold, but that's a whole nother story. I don't think there's anything under here of real interest, but let's take it off anyway and see what I see. Okay, there you go. And there, of course, is the air filter element. Anyway, not much, piece of billet aluminum, another piece of billet aluminum. Now, I don't know if you'll be able to see in here or not, but the inside corner is not radiused. The inside corner is perfectly square. This edge here and this edge here meet at 90 degrees. It's perfectly square in here. I don't have a flow bench. I don't check flow. But Jesus Christ, air, I don't believe, makes a 90-degree turn without generating a lot of turbulence in here. So You know, horsepower wise, I'm sure this thing is going to cost you. It totally disrupts the airflow going into the carb, and it's just a piece of crap. Why anybody want this? I don't know. Some people like this shit. I think it's all junk. But anyway, just me. Hey, have you ever fought with trying to get this brake return spring up over that little pin over there? I'm going to show you absolutely the easiest way to do it. Get yourself your smallest 1/4" drive depot socket. This is 3/16. Put an extension on it. You should be able to hook the socket over the end of the spring, and with that you should be able to lever it up and over. It don't get any easier than that. Anyway, give it a try next time you got to change one of these. Men, let's take a look at some brake drums. This is going on, well, this one is going on the 70's chopper, okay? And I wanted to give you a little more background. Obviously, I have a new brake drum over here. I got some new brake pads we're going to put on here. But I wanted to give you a little backstory to explain how we got to the point where this one has a big chunk broken out of it, and previous maintenance decided they didn't need to worry about that. But anyway, the owner had taken the motorcycle to a reputable shop, supposedly, to have tires put on it. He brought them the whole bike, so they had to take the tire and the wheel off. They had to take the brake backing plate out, and they must have seen this. How do you not see this? I gotta believe it was broken when they worked on it, because this crack is rusty down inside here. So this, you know, this didn't happen yesterday. This happened a long time ago, and I gotta think that they saw it was cracked or broken off or about to break off. You know, this is not overnight damage. But anyway, for whatever reason, they didn't. And there was a couple other things they screwed up too. We'll look at those in a minute. But let's look at these brake drums and do a couple of measurements on them. This one is out of my scrap pile, and I don't know why I'm saving it. But anyway, it's no good. The reason we're looking at this is because this one has the max diameter stamped on it. I thought they all had the max diameter stamped on it, but neither the new one or the damaged one have a diameter stamped on it, but this one does. So I dug it out of the scrap pile just to see what it was. The Harley manual doesn't talk about what that number is either, so they don't care apparently. But 8.046 max diameter of a Harley brake drum. This one I measured, well, this is why it's in a scrap pile. I measured it, and the drum is bigger than the max diameter by, what's that, 1/9 of an inch. So this one's almost 10 thousandths over. So anyway, this is just an exemplar of a bad brake drum. It's worn beyond limits, so it's no damn good. So let's take a look at this guy here. And I have one of the giant calipers here. Okay, that's 0, it's set on inches. And I know this isn't, you know, precisely accurate, but for our purposes it should be fine. Okay, this thing measures out to 7.563. It's measuring on the outside of the caliper, so we have to add a 1/2 inch to that. So 3, 6, 1. Okay, so this one measures out to 8.063. And we decided the maximum diameter was what, 8.046. So this thing is pert near 20 thousandths over the limit. So it was getting pretty thin in this area. It looked pretty thin to me, which is why I decided to measure. By the way, this thing is no damn good. It must have been cracked when it was in the shop for the tire change, and they did nothing about it. Let's take a look at the new one here. And the new one measures 7.480 plus a half an inch because we're measuring on the outside of the caliper. So this one's 7.900. So this thing has got a full pert near 56 thousandths of an inch to go. This is way smaller than the maximum diameter, smaller by 56 thousandths of an inch. So yeah, this one is good. And you know, I bash V-twin a lot, but this is a V-twin brake drum, and it really is in pretty good shape. Well, you would hope it's in pretty good shape. It's new, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It did have some overspray on the friction surface, which I sanded off, but I don't have to machine anything. Well, of course, it's not on a bike yet, but it doesn't look like I'm going to have to machine anything, grind anything. It looks like it's going to work as advertised. So, you know, V-twin puts out a lot of clinkers, but this looks like it'll be just fine. It's always a tricky thing to get the camera in a position where you could see what's going on and where I could actually do what I need to do. So we'll see how this works out. Springs over the pins in here. There it goes. Wasn't too bad. Okay, when I took the brake apart on the bike, the cam obviously goes in here. You could barely move this thing. If I actuated the lever on the, you know, the backing plate over here, I could turn this, but just barely turn it, and there was no free play in here whatsoever. So I got it apart and was looking at it, and all it was dirty. It had rock hard grease in it. I mean, the stuff had turned into like asphalt. So this was bound up inside here, and there was no play in it whatsoever because the grease had gotten so hard. It was like tar, pretty much. Okay, if you've watched my channel previously, you may have seen the video with this little doodad. This is my brake shoe spreading tool, and I find it to be a real handy little gadget. There's actually a purpose for me showing you some of this, and we'll get to that in a second because I'm going to show you the other thing that I found wrong with this. Let's see if that's enough. Nope, no more. A little more. Okay, that'll do it. Let me put a little grease on here. and I'll back out the spreader. Okay, this may be a little harder to demonstrate. When I took this apart, there's this washer here on the end of the actuating cam. This washer was actually under the brake shoe, and behind the brake shoe. So the brake shoe was actually riding on the edge of this washer. Okay, when you actuated it, you were only moving the brakes out the distance in the difference between the width of the cam and the diameter of the washer. You know, how could you put something together like that? But that's how I took it apart. I'm not making this shit up. You know, I really find it kind of irritating. The shop did this work on this guy's bike, and like I said, it was supposed to be a reputable shop. Obviously, the bike has only got one brake on it. You'd think you would make sure that the one brake that was there was working correctly. I mean, you had the wheel apart. Certainly, you must have noticed the cracked or broken brake drum. You would have thought that you would have noticed this thing on the wrong side of the brake shoes. And, you know, just not, you know, I don't know. Mechanics these days, if they can't fix it with a computer and a USB, they don't want nothing to do with it. But anyway, so I found cracked drum, washer misinstalled, grease as hard as a rock. The shoes had cracks on them. You know, not real severe, but cracks. You know, there's no way this brake was going to work good. And indeed, the owner today, when I was talking to him, told me that, yeah, he rarely got it over 40 miles an hour. And yeah, there were times when he was approaching a stoplight and was dragging his feet. Oh, good Lord. Anyway, we're going to get this fixed up for him. Hopefully it's going to work a lot better when we get it on the bike. Okay, here's one other prior to installation check I'm going to do on this thing. The new brake shoes, of course, have to be smaller than the drum. So let's see if this will drop in there. It does drop in there. Good. So we'll bolt the drum on the hub and put this wheel back together again. This is the wire harness, the old wire harness, most of the old wire harness out of this 70 XLH chopper over here. They utilize the just twist the bare wires together method. They also utilized the crappy soldering job method. They also utilized the bogus crimp connection. And this one's kind of interesting. The crimp connector is much bigger than the wire. So I don't know if you could quite see in the photo, but see that little loop? They doubled the wire back on itself to make it a little fatter so it fit tighter in the crimp. You know, once again, another, who the hell knows what kind of crimp job was done on that. But anyway, it's been cut out of there and replaced. You know, this wire, some of it was so old and so hard, whenever you bent it, the insulation would crack. Just a mess all over. Anyway, it's been replaced. Okay, this bike is done. It's fixing to roll out of here. I've cranked it over with the plugs out, and it cranks over just fine. Cranks over real nice. Just a couple of kind of follow-up notes. I had previously remarked that these battery covers were junk, and they are. However, I finagled that one a little bit, and it fits much better and installs much better than it used to. It's got a new strap because the T-bolt was all stripped out on the other one and it was missing the cover. So that's an upgrade for it. One of the good choices a previous mechanic or electrician made was this. It has a push button over here for the electric starter. Obviously the handlebar controls have all been removed from this thing, but this is a heavy duty one, and when they put it in they eliminated the relay that used to sit up under here. So he got rid of a fistful of wiring and a gob of electrics you really didn't need. I've often wondered why Harley didn't do something like this from the get-go. It would seem to be much more reliable than what used to be there. One other electrical thing to talk about briefly. This is the horn switch, and he got rid of the relay on the starter system, but there was actually a relay wired into the horn. So wires came up to the switch, they went back down and around and were under the battery box, then they came back up over here to the switch, when really all you needed was a wire from the switch to the horn. And the way they wired this up, it's a momentary contact, center off, either side on, so that up and down is the horn, and that's really a pretty good horn, nice and strong. Okay, here's one other item for the electrical improvements page. The bike now has a high-low switch. It didn't have that before, it was just always on high beam. When I was going through the bike initially, I had remarked how the tires still seem to be in the center of the fender. And if you look at it now, you'll notice it is not. I had the chain off, of course, when I had the engine out, so I went to put it all back together again and adjust the chain, and what I found was the axle adjusters were all fucked up. And they were all fucked up because the tire barely clears the swing arm on this side. So they had the front end of the tire tilted over in that direction, which was one of the reasons why it was so damn close to the chain guard. And the ass end of the tire was kicked over to the left, which made it look like it was lined up. Once again, this 130 tire is really too wide for this bike. You should really go at the absolute most a 110. You know, back in the olden days, this would have been a 5x16. But this is a little bigger than that, so it does not actually fit in here. But anyway, in order to fix the problem of it almost rubbing over here, they kind of twisted the tire around a little bit, which made it look like it was centered, but it really wasn't. It was kind of angled the other direction. I've got it very, very close to straight right now, but it's not perfect. It can't be. Okay, the problem of the big washer anchoring the backing plate and causing it to flex has been eliminated. I put a spacer behind the brake anchor, so there's now about 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch engagement between the brake anchor and the frame rails, so it can now slide back and forth when you adjust the wheel, and it's no longer preloading the backing plate causing it to flex. So the brake should work much better. And the ridiculous pointy air cleaner. And if you're one of those guys who likes ridiculous pointy air cleaners, sorry to offend you, but the ridiculous pointy air cleaner is gone, and we've got the good old standby S&S teardrop on there. That should work much better installation wise and performance wise. It's a much better configuration. Anyway, we're about to put gas in it. I'm about to get it off the lift, and we're going to go see if it fires up. All right, we're going to see if we can make it go. This is absolutely the first start attempt. Conveniently located switch.
Doesn't get any better than that. Yeah, doesn't get any better than that.
Hey, support the channel. Get yourself a coffee cup. Get yourself a sticker. Join me on Patreon. But anyway, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it from all of you. I am out of here. We'll catch you next time.